360 Info. I'm your host, Antonio. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. Welcome to the show. I want to give you a reminder about the Juneteenth ball. Go out there and get your gear. Get ready for it's the last Sunday in June, June 29th at the Mediterranean Party Center, and that's in Bedford Heights. Come on out and join us after we did all our celebrating in June, regardless of what Trump say. We don't need. See, we got to get to the point where we don't need permission from anybody to do anything that we think is beneficial to us in the community. That's our problem. We around here asking for permission to do something, and nobody does that. So regardless of what Trump say, dealing with a federal holiday, if we think it's something important to us, it's up to us to do this. Until we do that, folks gonna not take us seriously, and we always gonna be shunned and not invited to the table all the time because you can't stand on your own 2 feet and do things for yourself and your community. So come on out and join us after we do all our celebrations as far as Juneteenth is concerned, and let's relax ourselves, come out in our regalia, eat some African food, and enjoy ourselves in our culture. In the remote studio, we got Brother Vince. What's going on, Brother Vince?
Well, I wholeheartedly and completely agree. We got to do what we got to do. So if somebody says they don't want to give us a holiday, we can take a holiday. So let's do that. Just want to give you an update. Today at Larchmere Arts, I am pleased to welcome Elijah Gilmore to our stage at Larchmere Arts. We're going to do a spoken word performance, but it's going to be percussion. So if you didn't know, piano is percussion and drums are percussion. So we're going to have some percussion and we're going to have some poetry at Larchmere Arts. This evening, it starts at 7 o'clock. Also want to pull your coattail and let you know that we are going to have Gloria Cummings Jones with Elijah Gilmore, Ed Ridley, and Brad McGee. They'll be doing jazz, and this will be on the 30th of this month. And we might have something in between those events. Also, very excited to let you know that there is going to be something called the Larchmere Cultural Arts Festival. It's going to be a 3-day festival on Larchmere. We are going to involve Unbar, Adun Spice Company, Kings and Queens Cultural Village, Literary Cleveland, and Larchmere Arts. We have several events planned, and I'm really excited to let you know about this. The word is getting out, and we have some great expectations and hopes for what is going to happen in July. Today, I'm just saying that this is the most flexible brother that I know. This brother can stand on one hand if he wants to. I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. He is a master, and I'm putting it out there, Brother Ismail. He is a master of capoeira. He is also involved with Tai Chi, and he knows some Qigong as well. And I thought it would be really important for us to bring folks information that they can use, knowledge that they can use to better their lives, better the quality of our lives. And who better to do it for us than Brother Ismail Douglas? So, Ismail, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I'm
Yes.
honored to be here.
And I'm honored to have you. And if you could just give folks a little bit of background on you. I know you just recently retired from the Kenneth Clement School over there. What's that street? It's not
On
Shaw.
Woodworth.
Woodward. Yeah,
Right.
it's over there. You retired from that position, and now you are living the busiest life that you could possibly have ever had. So tell us what you're doing now.
Well, right now, thank you again for the invite. And I do want to put a disclaimer. I know, Vince, I'm humbled by you calling me master. I always say I'm a student of these disciplines, whether it's Tai Chi, capoeira, or the music. I've been involved in the martial arts for a long time. I've been a musician for a while. I'm the 7th child of 8 children, and my parents were from the South, of course. And what's interesting about my parents, I want to get his background because I give a shout out to them. My father met my mother when he was 16, and he stayed with my mother until he made his transition at the age of 85. So you can do the math on that. So I was raised in a house where I saw some stability, all forms of music, jazz, blues, all kinds of, genres of music, which really inspired me and which caused me to pick up the guitar. And so I was listening to Wes Montgomery, who is, as you know, one of the most prolific and powerful and well-known jazz guitarists in the history of jazz, right? But what's the thing about Wes didn't take lessons from anybody. I remember seeing an interview, and Wes said, I didn't want to learn from anybody because I didn't want anybody telling me I was doing something wrong. And he started playing the guitar at the age of 18, which is, in terms of when you look at musicians, that's kind of like not late, but usually people start when they're younger. So I remember listening to A Day in the Life. And that really inspired me to want to play the guitar because my brother brought a guitar home and I took up that practice. And then when I was in high school, I had a friend that we started studying yoga. And that was very uncommon, to see people, Black folks doing yoga, right? And we was doing yoga and we was doing it out of a book. And then from there, I met someone who told me to start doing Tai Chi. I said, what is Tai Chi? I didn't know what that was. So I went on Coventry, Master Wong, China Treasure House, which is on Coventry. And I started going there. And I went there twice a week. Sometimes I would have to hitch a ride. I went when I really didn't really feel well because I wanted to learn Tai Chi. When I went to the first class, they did the whole form, 108 movements. And I was like, what's this about? But I eventually learned it. And then I was honored to meet a Master Wayne Chandler. And we was having a conversation. It was, a matter of fact, at my house. Him and Baba Kalindi were there. And I was making a conversation about capoeira. So Master Wayne Chandler said, I know capoeira. I said, do you? I said, I want to learn that. And from there, I met his master, Master de Besola. So what I've done for myself is I created my own system where I've integrated the Tai Chi, the yoga, and capoeira. For me, this is my system that I've developed, and it works for me.
Okay.
But these are all powerful, in my estimation, very powerful practices that, if they're done daily, can really transform your life, because then you become rooted in who you are.
So we get questions, or I practice Qigong. What is Tai Chi?
So Tai Chi, and there's different, the thing about Tai Chi is to keep remember, these are family styles, right? And Tai Chi, from what I started to understand, is really the cultivation of this energy that we all have, right? So I always say either your lifestyle will deplete your energy, keep it where it is, or it's going to enhance your energy based on what you do. So these practices, that are very ancient, that comes out of China, helps you to develop this internal power, or chi, or the energy, right? And there's a lot of layers to this. And the thing about, I always say, when people come to our class, you look at Tai Chi on videos, you don't see the process to where these people that got them there. It took a lot of work, and learning how to breathe correctly with the movements, right? It's associated with when you're doing the Tai Chi movements, and having very intentional with your focus. So one grandmaster said it took him 10 years to discover his chi and 30 years on how to use it. And he was a grandmaster. So I said, wow, that's an investment, right? Like anything else. When you invest something, you get the returns. But everybody's different. So I mean, there's, again, a lot more we could say about it. But the thing, most people don't understand that Tai Chi is a martial arts. The basis of it is martial arts. And most people learn it for the health benefits. And there are a lot of health benefits in doing Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have Tai Chi and then you have Qigong. Can you talk about the difference between the two?
So in the Tai Chi, there's Nigong too. But in Tai Chi, there's the elements of the Qigong, right? Qigong is dealing movements and learning how to deal with the energy through different postures, right? And also sitting and meditation, right? And the thing about Tai Chi, you have this Taoist philosophy, and what you have in Gong is the Taoist philosophy of the universe and how the yin and yang, not yin and yang, you don't say yin and yang, you say yin yang. And these are two things that are not in conflict, but they work together in unison. And learning how to move in nature. And Tai Chi and Qigong and Nigong is how do you move with nature? Because nature is highly respected, because we are a representation of nature.
Okay. Interesting. So you
Tai Chi,
mentioned,
this is like the constant move.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was saying the Tai Chi, there's the movements of the form, right? And in that form, the different things, the body, the organs are being massaged when you do Tai Chi. And all of this becomes evident in one who practices these principles are inherent in Tai Chi. But I always want to stress it's a practice, because you can read a book on something and you can watch it on the video, but until you practice it, then you will see the realization of what it is.
Yes. And when you say practice, I'm thinking about Allen Iverson.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great basketball player that didn't have a great appreciation for practice for whatever reason, because he had that talent. But when you talk about practice, it's something, and Wayne is a glaring example of this. It's something that you do every day. This is something that requires discipline, but from the discipline you get the reward and the benefits from the practice. So I don't think we can overstate how important it is to have that daily practice. And I'm also imagining that you took up yoga at an early age. And I think that might be a partial explanation for why you are so flexible, because you've been stretching, consistently, and over a period of time, it's enabled you to get into the shape that you're in. You also mentioned capoeira, and I know, just having seen you perform some of the movements that are involved in that, being flexible enhances your ability to defend yourself, to execute the movements, and to be as fluid as you are in that martial art. Can you talk about what you get from capoeira that might be different from what you get from Tai Chi, if it's possible?
I don't know if it's something different, because I kind of like, again, I've kind of combined them and made my own chemistry of these disciplines. This is a capoeira is an African Brazilian martial arts system, right? That came from the Congo, or people say the Angola, which was under the Congo Empire, which enslaved Africans brought to Brazil. And because it was against the law to practice the martial arts, they, in their genius, created a form that was carried over from Angola, which was a rites of passage, and they brought this into Brazil, and they disguised it as they say, a dance, right? And because of that, they were able to maintain the culture. Like one historian said, we may have come empty-handed, but we didn't come empty-headed. We brought the culture, it was in us, but we adapted to the environment, and this is how you get capoeira. And then a part of capoeira too is this idea of movement, and we know the health benefits and the importance of keeping the body moving, right? But the interesting thing about capoeira, which I learned and love, is the music goes with it. So while you're playing the berimbau, which is behind me, I'll just show you real quick. This instrument is called the berimbau, right? Which is used in capoeira. And so the drum is called atabaque, and then there's different instruments that you have. But when the music is played, it dictates how people are playing in the jogo, the game of capoeira, because the berimbau is speaking. And they say that some people believe that the berimbau is the voice of the ancestors. So whoever's playing the berimbau, they can control how the game is played. And when the game is played, it's played between two people. And there's a conversation that is done and the harder, which means circle. And then there's songs that are sang, and there's music played, and it gives the history. And some of the songs talk about great maestros. It also talks about places in Africa. You will hear it. And sometimes when people are practicing candomblé, they'll talk about the orisha, and they may put that in the song. But the main thing is this conversation between the two people playing and also in harmony with the music.
Interesting. Wow.
So capoeira is all over the world. And what was interesting, I was in Istanbul, and the gentleman that was teaching it was from Denmark. Here's an art form that was outlawed in Brazil because it was against the law to practice capoeira for a while. And now it is all over the world. And you'll see some movements very similar to break dancing called b-boying, right? And we know in New York how that started to evolve. And some people say that there's a connection between that and capoeira. But the capoeira is something that we created, right? It's us, right? It's what we gave to the world, like we gave so many things to the world, right? But the thing that I want to stress here is important that we understand and embrace it. We don't have to practice the capoeira, but we need to expose our people to the power of it because it has a lot of power, a lot of ashe in it.
Yeah. But here's the thing too, though, with that, and it's just a testament and a validation to everything else that we've been saying and I've been saying for the longest. For me personally, Eastern philosophy, on how they approach the body, how they look at medicine, and even the connection. They understand the connection between mind and body and spirit and things like that. That's why I appreciate Eastern philosophy more than Western philosophy. Western philosophy is built on a foundation of exploiting, tearing stuff down, manhandling things, and not thinking about working in harmony and homogeneous with anything and things of that nature. So how they approach the body is a total different approach, and I think it's more in harmony with nature. And again, it's one of the gifts, like you said, that we have taught the whole planet, of this whole thing of this cosmic and how we relate to the cosmics and how we would the cosmology and numerology and all that is is connected. And when I thought about the flexibility, I was thinking about a guest we had a couple weeks ago, the chiropractor that dealt with stretching the skeletal mass, and things like that, and how that deals with blood flow and energy flow in the body too. Could you speak on how maybe those meridians work? Because the Eastern philosophy kind of speaks with those meridian and energy flow. And would you say that flexibility is necessary for us to get energy flow to those organs and how it nurses the organs?
Yeah, because the oxygen gets into the bloodstream, right? And then our cells, which we don't talk about. And I was just on an article, which I already kind of like, when I saw it, I said, oh, okay, I knew that. Is how sound affects cells, right? And if you think about the brain, it's what? Surrounded by water. And our body is what? Mostly water. And what's the greatest conductor of electricity? Water, right? That's why we said have to stay hydrated also. And so these meridians, it's like a roll system, a road map throughout the body, right? That's why certain things are done to keep activating our nervous system, our biological system, or do we massage our kidneys and our organs, right? And so there's certain things that can be done to help to keep those things activated. And I do want to go back to, because Vince asked me about the connection with capoeira and Tai Chi. It's all movement, right? And in the West, we sit too long. It's not healthy for the body. So in capoeira, you're always moving, but also it creates this idea of like Tai Chi and capoeira is how do you manifest something from inside and make it external? If that makes sense, right? How do you emit your chi from inside you to create a certain vibration in a room? Yeah, when somebody walk in, you either got good vibes or bad vibes, they're emitting something, right? And that's coming from within. So how do you keep the body balanced? And so because we are inundated with so much insanity right now, it's creating an imbalance not only in ourselves, but in the environment. So with Tai Chi and also with capoeira, this thing is, how do you create, when you're playing capoeira, how do you create balance in your movement where your anger doesn't overtake if somebody accidentally kick you? Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, that people get frustrated and angry, but a master will tell you, how do you stay calm? If you, nature teaches this, right? What do you think about the hurricane? What's the most powerful part of the hurricane? The eye. But the eye is what? Calm. And based on the power of the eye, it would determine the power of the hurricane. So how do we keep our internal calm so that we can create this chi or this ashe so that we can live with vitality and, with enthusiasm and not always be upset and depressed a lot? But that's what's happening particularly as we know in firsthand experience, we're seeing that. I was meeting with a friend yesterday and she's a therapist and she's saying there are a lot of people who are very depressed right now. So how do we use these practices to help alleviate those symptoms that we're having that's internal?
Ismail, you just struck, I want to say struck a nerve, but I think that's a negative way of looking at it. But you talked about calm. And I'm just thinking about what Dr. James Brown has shared with us about peace. And I'm putting peace and calm together. The world that we live in right now puts us in a place of reacting to things. And usually when we react to things, it's something that brings negative energy to us. It could be the stress of knowing that the federal funding for the program that you're involved in is going away. It could be that the electricity went off and it's not a windy day. It's a calm day, but the electricity is off and it's, 9 o'clock at night and it's cold outside. And how do you respond to that? But to have this mantra that enables you to be calm in the midst of adversity, in the midst of stress and strain and all those other kinds of things, it's really about being able to maintain your peace no matter what happens. The true test of your success in life is to be able to meet adversity with peace and not allow anything to disturb your peace. So, and I'm sure that what Dr. Brown is talking about comes from that Eastern philosophy that Brother Hamtonio loves. So I just wanted to amplify that thought. It could be Qigong, it could be Tai Chi, it could be any of a number of modalities, but all of them kind of bring you back to that same thing. And that's your command of your life energy, your life force. So I just want folks to connect with the idea that if somehow you're able to cultivate a mind state that enables you to be calm, when that person calls you the N-word, you don't react because that ain't who I am. That ain't what I am. And that person might be physically threatening to you. But when you have that knowledge, you got capoeira, that if this person threatens me and then they come for me, I can transmute that energy so that it doesn't injure me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So to me, life is capoeira, right? Life is Tai Chi, right? Life is a musical dance, right? And I always told my young men, be ready so you don't have to get ready. So when you're grounded in you, when things happen, you have to find the resources where you don't get so wiped out, you lose your focus. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, they cut a tree down in my yard, and I'm watching them taking these big branches and limbs over the house. So I'm tripping like, I hope this thing don't snap. But what I realized, I gave it so much energy, so I felt a little unease, a little unbalanced, right? So I did my practices, and what happened is I realigned myself just doing the practice. But I had to be aware of, this is what I did to myself by something external, right? I'm creating all these images. What if this thing fall? But it didn't fall. But I was projecting that. And I said, where is this coming from? And then when I sat with myself, because I started feeling uneasy, I said, oh, it's because I created this scenario that didn't even happen, but it affected me internally. So I had to do my practice to kind of get realigned with myself, to get myself more settled. And then when I did it, that eerie feeling left. And I said, oh, these techniques work.
Right. Because you're involving your mental aspect as well as the physical aspect. And I'm thinking about Wayne's book. You know, the very first chapter basically tells you the universe is mental. So when you can control your mentality, then you can control the other things. And where we're missing out in this society is that the war that's taking place is the war that's in our minds. And they control our minds, they control our thinking, then they control our lives. But when we take control, just as you did, you looked at this situation and your default was to a fearful state.
Yes.
This branch could drop on my house, and I know I got a homeowner's policy, but I don't want to deal with all that, you know. And then when you rethought the situation, and then you came to grips with the idea that, hey, these people are professionals. They know what they're doing. They do this every day. And they're not going to let that branch fall on your house and damage their roof, because it's going to be consequences for them. And so then they worried about losing their job, you know, and their whole livelihood is gone. So they're not going to let that branch hit your house. Antonio, seemed like you had a burning question or comment.
Yeah, I mean, we back to the whole thing again about energy. And that should be something that we really dive off into. I'm talking about people as individuals and understanding this thing called energy. Because the whole, they talk about what is it, Tesla, to talk about if you want to know more about the universe, understand vibrations, frequencies, and things like that. And that's what it's all about, because what our good brother is talking about, even with the moves and the flexibility, it's all about moving energy throughout the body. When you eat food, it's about what? Giving you what? Energy. You know, I go back and I think about the movie Phenomenon with John Travolta in there. And one statement he made that just stuck with me. And he said, when I eat this apple, this apple becomes a part of me, and it's a transfer. So if it's life in that apple and that energy that is kissed by God's energy, that sun and everything else, and it's a transfer of energy from that apple to your body, I thought that was a profound statement. And even because, Vince, we always talk about food, plants, and, and how, eating dead something, getting something, eat some dead and thinking it's going to bring you energy. You know what I mean? And that's our argument when we talk about eating something that's dead, as far as meat is concerned. It's not a good transfer of energy. You know what I mean? And then I want to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about, and I know you can relate to it, because with Wayne, when we talk about these organs and we talk about energy to these organs, another method, and Vince can relate to this as well, when we talk about those healing sounds, music, and things of that nature and vibration, that is another form of massaging those particular organs in your body. That's why you feel so good. So we talking about frequencies. Everything is about frequencies, so it's so important for us. That's why I like Eastern philosophy. So it's so important for us to really understand those particular things, and I think that would be that would get us on the journey of returning and discovering our health, and that's why I like Eastern philosophy so much better.
Because even with the music, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with the sound, it's also sound that you create. So it's not always about sound that you take in. It's also about sound that you create. So for instance, Wayne has taught us, when you want to send healing energy to the lungs, the sound is zzz.
Right.
This is something that you can do. You don't need a tuning fork.
Mm-mm.
You don't need YouTube, so Veggio frequencies or Spotify. These are exercises that you can do on a daily basis that are going to send that healing energy to your systems. And just this whole idea of us being energy, us being electric beings. I don't think we relate to this, but I was having a conversation with someone earlier in the week, and it's like we're computers. We got programs running. We
Right.
got records, we watch programs that program us. you know, we're electric beings. So when I think about this ringing in my ear, I think, oh, well, that seems kind of natural just because of the fact that I'm an electric being. I was meditating the other day and using the frequency generator, and I had it set to 528
Okay.
528 hertz, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, as I'm hearing this sound, I'm just wondering if the ringing in my ears is 528, or is the frequency that I'm listening to, are they kind of matched? Sometimes I might have a heater running in the background. I have it set at 174 hertz,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm wondering, is this heater, is it running at 174 hertz, or is it close? Because it just seems like the sounds are close. And I know this is pure conjecture on my part,
Right.
but I do think that it is relevant, and that's one of the reasons why it's incumbent upon us to explore these ideas, to explore these things, because when you look at the way Western medicine is practiced, and you juxtapose that against the way Eastern medicine is practiced, the Western medicine is compartmentalized. So they're looking at one thing and isolating it from other things. But
That's
when
right.
you look at the Eastern medicine, everything is connected,
Connected.
Yeah.
Right.
which is how Capoeira and Tai Chi could have that connection, or
Yeah.
Qigong and Tai Chi could have that connection. Everything works together. Brother Antonio mentioned the meridians.
Right.
Again, these are things that we really
These
don't.
are pathways in the body.
Right. They're pathways. So when you do something like this or this, you're
Mm-hmm.
affecting meridians. We talked about tapping before the show started. Ismail, could you talk a little bit about that and what it does for you?
So one of the first things I tell, I encourage my students to do, don't turn on the TV, don't look at your text messages, is to tap the body, because it'll activate the system, right? And there's certain places where you can tap, we tap all over the body, helps with the meridians, what we're talking about, the organs, waking them up and keeping them strong, right? Because if you look at a cat, the first thing a cat does when it wakes up, it does what? It stretches, right?
Stretches.
So nature is teaching us, right? So tapping the body, you ain't got to be, overdo it, but you want to activate and wake your system up so that you can be full of vitality. So the tapping is important. You're tapping the whole body, the bottom of the feet. There's certain places in class we talk about that. Certain kidney points in the foot. There's points all over the body. We just got to know where they are and how you need to massage them, tap them to activate that. And the thing about it is really keeping our body at high maintenance, right? Not getting burnt out. So what my understanding is, these practices, what I've come to see is that, and experience is, it allows you to live with vitality, right? I'm not saying you're not going to get sick. It's not a cure. I'm not saying that every day is going to be perfect, but then you have the skill set at your disposal to fix it. That's the thing about it, to be able to repair the damage. You're there. Like I said, yesterday I had to repair myself, right? Because I created this scenario, but I knew what to do.
Well, here's the thing. Let me make a point here too. Let me make this point. Everything that you're talking about, that we're talking about, and those particular practices are good for you. And we have to come to understand what we are fighting against. We are fighting against a system that is anti-nature, anti-natural. You know, it's no way. I mean, we should truly understand and know that an apple is good for you, and an apple under its normal conditions would do great and wonders for you. I'm sitting here drinking what we're a green drink right now. Okay,
Right.
all right. Now, if I was to do this every day, my lifespan would be great. Okay. Now, some of us would sit up here and say that, well, I was doing this and I was doing this, and I'm saying this because you said you might still get sick. But under normal conditions, you probably wouldn't, because what we're fighting against is these lights, these frequencies, all these toxins that this man is put in the air, all the toxins in the food, all the toxins in your water. You know what I'm saying? That's why these particular exercises, you're trying to stay ahead of the game with that, because you're being bombarded with all this other stuff. Because people say, well, he's a vegetarian and he still died, but something else might have caused that issue. This man got all kind of stuff out here that is intrusion on the body, something fierce, something fierce that you're going through every day. That's why these type of modalities and practices is important. If we was living in this particular society that we weren't bombarded by all this, the evidence would be overwhelming on why being a vegetarian and eating off the land is that, because you have people living 70 and people who's a vegetarian be 170 years old if they wasn't bombarded with all this external stuff, that this internal environment that we living in, from the air, from the, I mean, think about when you walk in your house and then sun rays come through your window and you see those little particles from these textiles and the carpet that is flowing in the air, you inhaling that stuff. You know what I mean? And then we walk around and don't expand the lungs. So all these toxins. So I'm saying the environment plays a heavy part in this whole in the longevity as far as your life is concerned. So I just threw that out there just to make people, well, how I know this is going on. Yeah, but this is what we're battling here, and that's why you need to get on some type of practice. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
So I just want to amplify what you just said and summarize it with one word, and that is countermeasures.
Yes.
There's all these things going on, and you could sit back and say, well, okay, well, all this is going on and do nothing, or you could take it upon yourself to do something to push back on what's happening. It could be as simple as going outside, taking your shoes off, and putting your feet on the ground. Something as simple as that. Ismail?
I just wanted to say, and what I mean by not getting sick, because sometimes people are not consistent with their practice. Then they'll get sick. Like, what happened? See, but the body has its own intelligence, right? It's like your car. When there's a system, something going on with your car, you will see it, right? The backyard, you need an oil change or you need some maintenance. The body will give you a message, like something you need to change that is not working in your favor. And what do you need to do to correct the problem, right? And what happens is, like, people had their New Year's resolution. They go to the gym for a month. All right, that didn't work. Well, what do you expect? You've been having a bad habit for 10 years. In 1 month, you want to fix it. Right, it doesn't work like that. And we have to be patient with ourselves. We want this microwave approach. We want it to be over right away. No, but you've had a lifestyle like this for a number of years. It's going to take some time because you're not going anywhere. This body's with you 24/7. You can't get one on the internet. You can't get one online. So you might as well treasure this temple that you're living in and take care of it. And another thing that we say in Tai Chi, wherever the mind goes, the Chi will follow.
Yes.
So whatever thoughts you have, whatever they're positive or negative, that's what you're going to create in your life.
Yes.
And
I want to also
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention something that was just stated, and that was not in these words exactly, but the pain showing up. When that pain shows up, it's a signal to you that there's something that you need to address.
Exactly.
And what we typically do is we go to the doctor and we say, Doc, this hurts. And Doc says, well, okay, well, we can make the pain go away, and he'll give you a pill. You haven't addressed what's causing the pain. Your body is talking to you and saying, hey, we don't have enough magnesium. We don't have enough calcium.
We're gonna have enough vitamin D3.
B1, B2, B3, whatever. So get me some B3. Doctor doesn't have any training in nutrition or very little, so he doesn't connect the lack of that to the pain. He just says, well, let me give you an anti-inflammatory to fight against the inflammation, but the inflammation is a signal to you, you got to deal with this, bruh. You got to deal with this.
The medication has a side effect.
Yes.
You just try to get hay fever, and you take some, your heart will stop, your eye fall out, again. And I'm not saying that people don't need to go to their doctors, because, I want to be very careful with that, because everybody's different. But the thing is investing in yourself.
And Ismail, sorry about that.
They want this easy fix, right? And you have to invest in yourself, because this is all you have, right? And you can deal with the external things of, taking the medication, but that your symptoms is tied to something that's internal.
For sure.
Right? Whether, you're worried a lot, you don't get enough sleep, you're not eating correctly, you don't move your body enough, you don't stretch. So when you don't take care of the body, it's going to tell you, like, you're not taking care of me. It's going to tell you that.
Here's the thing too. Here's the homework, Ismail, and Vince, that we want to give to our listeners. Anatomy. Take the time to go in there and go and study the different organs of the body. I would challenge everyone to do that. See how they're interconnected and what do they need in order to run optimally. See, our organs is like out of sight, out of mind. We don't think about it. A lot of us grown don't even know where the different placements of the organs is in the body. So let alone know what it takes to function. How does your liver relates to your gallbladder? Because they want to quickly just suck your gallbladder out and say you can work without your gallbladder. But if you understood what you're missing, when as far as helping create the bile and things of that nature for the liver, you'll see that that might cause me some problems somewhere down the line. Not working with the body. So because we're ignorant and we put our trust all into the medical industry, and they tell us anything and they just practicing on you, but we owe it to ourselves to know a little bit about our organs, where they're at, and how they work. And then at that point, it'll put you in a position of power and strength of understanding what you put right here in this mouth in order to take care of yourself. So I challenge everybody to do that.
Let me give you an example, right? When you order something online, it comes with a manual, right? You read the manual, right? And if you don't follow it correctly, it's not going to work. Do we read this manual? Not everything in it has a purpose. The divine creator just didn't say, I'm going to just put this in because it
Come on, man.
Everything has a specific purpose, right?
Exactly.
And there's no mistakes in the human body in terms of why it was created in this way. It is a beautiful machine.
Absolutely. Your tonsils.
And because it's so beautiful, we need to take care of it like we take care of our clothes, right? And we send to the cleaners. If something says you got to send to the cleaners, you don't put it in the washing machine for the most part, right? You take it where? To the cleaners. But we don't give that same, I'm not saying us, right? But for the most part, human beings don't give that attention to the body. That's why you had all these great teachers. It's to try to get you directed back to yourself, whether you follow Hinduism, Buddhism, Yoruba, whatever you're following, right? Taoism, Christianity, Islam, is really pointing you back to you. But we want somebody else to tell us what to do. I always want to live somebody else's narrative. Find your narrative and live that. Everybody's not going to agree with it. So what? You didn't get permission to come here from somebody else.
All
You
right.
came here. And when you came here, you brought something that was profound. And that's us.
Yes.
And if we can see that and with an intention, that's the meditation. Life is meditation. It's not just sitting somewhere. It's how do you navigate life? How you flow in life? That's the Tai Chi. That's the capoeira. That's the meditation. How do you flow? Are you basing your integrity of who you are? You don't need to apologize for being you, because we're here for a purpose.
That's true.
And to live that purpose, everybody's not going to welcome that. And that's fine. That's okay. Stay in your lane. I'm going to drive in this lane, and I'm going to drive the way that I feel works for me. As long as I'm not disrupting the planet, but I'm bringing harmony, I'm living in my destiny. I'm living in my harmony. I'm living in my purpose or my vision. You know, like Vince, you play piano, right? When you're playing, you don't have to worry about somebody on the bass. You got to hold your stuff, right? You want to make sure everything is in harmony, but it's your spirit that you're playing, that you're bringing to the music. And then if that person is playing another instrument and you're in harmony, you're making music, not noise.
Right.
So how do we make this music in life? You know, the harmony. How do we create harmony? But first it has to be internal, because what we project outside is internal.
Yes.
But it's about observations. 1 second, Vince. Observations. You know, and that's what our ancestors did. They observed nature. You know, and observing things, you know, God reveals himself to you through nature. So if you work in harmony with nature, or you study nature, take time to study nature, that would draw you closer to where you want to be in dealing with this harmonious type of state. You know, if you see the flowers close up at night, they go to sleep. You know, they wake up in the morning, you know, the way animals and birds do and operate within the confines of nature and things. That's what this system is taking you totally out of nature and natural ways of doing something. And that's why we're having a lot of the issues that we're having right now.
Because even a lot of martial systems were based on studying animal movements, right? Nature, watching nature.
Yes.
I just want to.
Instruments. Okay, go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, I just want to take this time to bring our listeners into the picture. You're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Our guest today is Brother Ismail Douglas. He is a martial artist. He won't let me call him a master, but I will say that he's mastered things that I'm a student at. So I get it. I get it. Also, just wanted to take this opportunity to let you all know that we are live on Facebook and YouTube. As a matter of fact, our signal today is coming through Facebook to you in Radio Land. Our engineer, Tone Harley, informed me of that. So if you're on Facebook right now, you can watch and listen to 360 Info Network. We're on YouTube as well, so we want to encourage you to go to our respective channels. If you are on our channel right now, just go ahead and click that subscribe button. And like, comment, share, let folks know. You can find our program stored on our YouTube channel. So if you are out and about on a Saturday and you can't tune in for whatever reason, you can always go to our YouTube channels and get great content such as what you are getting today. We're going to be wrapping up our terrestrial radio broadcast in a few moments, but you can continue to listen to this program and continue to watch this program on our YouTube channels. Lynn, you hit on something that I wanted to expand upon, because you issued a challenge to the folks who are listening and watching to understand their organs, how they work together, and so forth. I want to add to that, understand the emotions that are connected to your organs. When people live in worry, they have stomach issues. When people live in fear, they have kidney issues. When people live in anger, they have liver issues.
Right.
So a lot of times disease is just a manifestation of negative emotions that you are experiencing. We got about 3 minutes before we break out, but I wondered if you could expand on that for us, Ismail.
Yeah, so when we talk about the negative, I always like to look at the healing energy that you can send to those organs, like love, compassion, right? Smiling into your organs. Visualize smiling into your kidneys and sending positive languages like love to that. So each organ you can visualize that and send a very positive vibrational word to that organ. Because if you're having the liver issues, right, send positive energy there. But again, that's not going to say it's going to fix things right away. It has to be done as a practice. So what happens? People get saturated in their negativity. Mm-hmm. Right? They may take an aspirin, but that doesn't get rid of what caused it. Right? How can you now create the positive self-talk of sending the language of love? Visualize it. Right? Visualize your organ, your kidneys, and send something positive there. You'll be amazed what can happen.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm speaking from experience, right? And people in my class, they will tell you the same thing, right? A lot of things that we do in class specifically is to identify the organs in the body and things we need to do for that particular organ as a complete system too. So the Tai Chi is a complete approach to wellness and spirituality.
Yeah. And I will add to that you will get the same benefit from Qigong. So don't sleep on Qigong. And I'm sure that Brother Ismail has studied with Brother Wayne and has learned a few things about Qigong along the way. It's just interesting to me how all of these things work together, so you can get that benefit from Qigong, you can get that benefit from Capoeira, you can get that benefit from Tai Chi. And I'm gonna tell you, Brother Ismail, I'm like a sponge now. It's like, oh, I can do this. Okay. I have to remember what all these things do, but sometimes I just do them because I know whatever it's doing is doing something good for me. You know?
And self-massaging, like the fingers and all of this, the self-massages are very effective, right?
Right.
In helping the maintenance of the body. But
I
want to also say, I studied with Dr. Michael Frost too, the late Dr. Michael Frost, and he taught me a lot.
Yeah,
Dr.
Frost
Michael
was
Frost.
a good brother. He was a good brother.
Yes. So we're at 11:57 right here on AM 1490 WERE. We are about to conclude the radio broadcast, but we would encourage you, as I said just a few moments ago, to migrate over onto our YouTube channels. Lynn's channel is The Journey with Hamtonio. So you can go to YouTube, just put in the search window, the Journey with Hamtonio. It will bring up his channel and you can see the content that he has. You can also go to my channel, which is simply Vince Robinson, and pull up those. And again, on both situations, like, comment, subscribe, share, do what you can, because it really does help us do what we can to bring this content to you. Brother Lynn is going to share with you that there is going to be a Juneteenth ball, regardless of what 4745 Agent Orange says, and we can celebrate, we can't celebrate. Give them the details on that, and then I'll let folks know about what's happening at Larchmere Arts tonight.
Yes, the last Sunday of June, the Juneteenth ball. Let's culminate at the Mediterranean Party Center. Is where African Guard. We have a little entertainment, drumming, dancing, and a little food. So come on out. That's the 29th. Last Sunday of June, Mediterranean Party Center in Bedford. Tickets are 25 single, 45 couple. And brothers, come on out. Be more sisters than brothers. Brothers, come on out. Give me a call, 216-323-6155.
That sounds like a perfect situation, Lynn. If you wanted the brothers to show up, you have less competition. But on the other hand, the sisters need brothers. It goes hand in hand. It's like what Brother Ismail said, yin yang. You got to have one and the other. So brothers, show up. Just real quickly, we're going to do live music and poetry at Larchmere Arts this evening, 7 o'clock. Come on in. We'll have a little thing, a little something for you to munch on, a little something for you to drink, but you can do that. 12726 Larchmere Boulevard. Also, just big ups to Tone Harley. We on the radio, y'all, and thanks to him, we're doing it every Saturday. So thanks to Tone, and thanks to you for listening. As always, know yourself, love yourself, Be yourself. Make today your best day. Join us on YouTube, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.
All righty. We are just about ready to migrate, and it is 12 o'clock noon on the dot. So we're live to YouTube and Facebook right now. We are with Brother Ismail Douglas, someone who just retired and is living his busiest, best life right now. I so relate to what you're going through right now. I've been blessed to have been out of the plantation for 11 years. I'll be celebrating my anniversary on May 31st. Brother Hamtonio is probably coming up on a year right about now, if not close.
Not quite. We close.
Not quite, but he's close to a year off the plantation, and you know, not to have to get up at the crack of dawn and show up for massa is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So, but speaking of that, I know we've been talking about martial arts, but I was just reflecting on something that you said before we started the show, and you were just talking about the relationship that you have with young men who have come under your tutelage and the transformative effect that capoeira and the things that you teach has had on their lives. And it seems to me that, you know, and this is one of my pet peeves, because it seems to me that there is a competition between brothers and sisters about who has it worse. You know, they talk about Cleveland being the worst place in the country for sisters. And I'm just trying to understand, well, if it's that bad for the sisters, then is it not equally bad for us? Because we brothers and sisters, we living in the same city, dealing with the same issues, you know. And I think one of the things that happens is that sisters take responsibility for amplifying their cause. But we brothers, because we're so used to lacking emotion, not showing vulnerability, so forth and so on, sometimes we don't speak up for ourselves. I'm reflecting on something that happened a few weeks ago, where they had this program where they, you know, they promote sisters in different realms in our society, you know, and so they'll lift them up. But when do we do this for brothers? It's really rare. And I'm saying all that to say that we have to lift each other up, and we have to recognize the fact that even though there may be differences in the issues that we still face the issues, and we have to address them. So you worked at this school for boys for all those years, and you were able to give them information that they could use. I want you to talk about some of the issues that they are facing right now, because I know they didn't go away just because you left the school. What are the issues that they are facing, and what can we do to enhance the quality of life for our young men?
I'm glad you asked that question, because for the last month or so, I've attended two events. One was the Man Cave Conference, and they brought some men and young men together to have a dialogue on what's impacting us. And then last week, I was at a Boys to Men's event, again, discussing the same issues. And one of the things, you know, the many things, one is finding out, who are you? Why, you know, what it is to be an African-American man, a young man in this country. What does that really mean? And they've been, like, our young people, been given a narrative that's counterproductive, right? Because they're looking to find themselves, but it's in the wrong places, right? And that's why we have to create. I always say we have to have institutions, because institutions outlive us, where we can come together and talk about the variety of issues impacting us. One is, who are you? Do you value your community? How can you value something when you don't know who you are? It's like being on a basketball team and you don't know your role. You're in the way. Or you come from an environment where there's a lot of violence, or the manhood is defined by how many weapons you got and who you can hurt. And if somebody says something, you ain't backing down. What's there to prove? And I always say, it's best sometimes to walk away so you can be around tomorrow to talk about it. But it's this thing about having to prove themselves. And the part of that is just a lack of knowledge, self-knowledge. So we got to have whether some rites of passage programming to get our young people to be candid. And we have to listen to what they're going through. Because some of the stuff they go through, I'm like, man, and I tell my young men, and you still come to school? For all the stuff that you have to deal with. Somebody probably beat your mother up last night. There was the mother and father was fighting, or you walk past a dead body. You hear shooting all the time. That's one of the complaints that a lot of they hear because they can't get any sleep. So I know there's this fascination with shooting the guns at night, and then drag racing through the neighborhood, right?
A fellow student get killed. Go ahead.
So those things, and you think about a child that's in kindergarten already has been traumatized at the age of 5, and we know those are the crucial years where you have to be able to process information. But if your brain is having some conflict and all this fear, how can you really process the learning that takes place in the classroom? So what you see is and I've seen this, an 8-year-old cussing like they're a grown man, or kindergartners cussing, but they that's learned behavior. So how do we counteract that? So we got to create situations where we come together as Black men to work with our young brothers because they're going through a lot of pain. Then you got men who have not dealt with their pain.
That's what I was going to go with.
Yeah, so you have that. And I just tell my boys, sometimes you have grown boys at 25 because they've not dealt with their daddy issues. They've not dealt with the issues of trauma. And we know trauma lives through the DNA. We know that. And and I wish we could have talked about that earlier, Vince, about these practices, which can really help that, the trauma that's embedded in our DNA.
Well, we can talk about it because we still recording. So it's not the conversation is ended. Yeah. But before we go there, I just want to have you give us a picture of some of the issues that you dealt with within those conferences. And I was aware of them, and I kind of wish that I had been able to attend because, we get this idea that our young brothers are just renegades out there, that they just want to grow up to be thugs and hooligans, that they have no direction in life, and I'm glad you mentioned rites of passage because I also think that's something that we should execute outside of the school system because they pushed it out, even though when it was in the system, and I'm speaking of the work that our elder Baba Paul Hill has done in the school system, there was a benefit that came from that. And I think part of the reason that those programs don't exist is because they were doing what they were doing, which amplifies the notion that if they won't let us do it in their situations, and we got churches, we got fraternities and sororities, we got all these different entities, we can find ways to bring this. Because you talked about it in the previous hour, we have to know what our purpose is. And once we can wake up to our purpose and understand what role we play in society, then we can apply ourselves to doing the things that we're supposed to be doing and not doing the things that they have out there for us, like robbing and stealing and all that other kind of stuff, so that we end up incarcerated and dysfunctional and non-relevant other than being somebody else's cheap labor. So if you could you talk about some of the issues that you addressed in those conferences?
Yeah, and it's kind of like been a consistent theme for years. It's like, okay, I'm at this conference, we're talking about the same stuff, and really getting our young people, who do you know who you are? And they, no, I don't. And then you have men talking about their unresolved issues and trauma. And it's like, wow, we got some work to do. So one of the conferences I did was the men's cave conference. And what struck me was I gave them information and they was like, wow, why don't we know this, right? And I talked about capoeira, I talked about meta nature and all of that, the things that we brought to the planet and the things that we need to really make happen. So when I did my presentation at the man's cave, somebody said, "Oh, gee, how old are you?" Right? I told them how old I was. They was like, "Well, how do you move like that?" I said, but these are the things that I'm explaining. These principles, if you put them in your life, everybody's going to be different. It would change how your body moves. You know, you're creating this masterpiece through these practices. But one of the things is we just don't know as a people, particularly men, what is manhood, right? And so I asked the question, what's the difference between a warrior and a soldier? Just a basic question. Because a warrior moves differently than a soldier. Soldier's always taking directives, right? When you're a warrior, you create and carve your own path, but that's a lifestyle. There's a perspective about that. That takes a lot of work. And they were really, anytime I brought that up, and they were, even the men were like, yeah, that's kind of deep. I never really thought about it like that. But we tell our young men to be warriors, but
what? See,
what? Right. Yeah, I said, you're fighting the war that you don't understand. You're being used in the war as a pawn in the game against our best interests.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. A lot of the conversation, I mean, what we're talking about right now, you know, we talking about our children, we talking about our kids, we talk, you know, and it kind of spills over into our community in a person's environment. You know, we're a product of our experiences and our environment. Your environment, you was lucky to get into that environment that you know fell into with the yoga, and I think you said you ran into one of y'all was teaching, you know, I'm gonna start learning yoga, and,
a friend,
right, a friend. You fell into that, you know, and it changed your life, you know, put you on a path. And here's the problem, you know, our next generation might be saying the same thing, you know, about our kids lost, and how can we reach them, and this, that, and other. But in dealing with the root of all what we're talking about and all the social issues and whatever that Black folks in, we have felt them. It's our fault. Our fault. We have got off the path of understanding. When you talk about those rites of passage situations, that's old. That's ancient stuff.
Right.
You know, and we say right now that the rites of passage would help this, that we have let the system take us so far away and so far removed from who we are. You see, because who those kids are living with? They're living with their parents and their parents, grandparents before them. So if they don't know nothing, the mother ain't gonna know nothing, and the kid ain't gonna know nothing. You know, that's how it's gonna go. We can't just look at the kids and just say, hey, we're gonna jump on the kids. Well, you need to know this. The parents have felt them. The grandparents have felt them. And overall with Black folks, what the problem is, we have simulated into a system, like what we was talking before, have taken us out of nature, out of the realm of nature, out of the realm of being holistic, out of the realm of understanding that the mind, body, and soul is one entity. And we haven't developed, we lost all our cultural norms and customs that kept us in line with all of that. That's why I preach common culture so much and it's so important. I sit on these boards, I hear people talk about leadership role, this, that, and other. And what we are doing is just doing the same soup over and over. Capitalism, or how the system's set up right now, is not going to help us.
Right.
That's why we're in the problem that we're in right now, following the wrong lead. We got to get back to what our ancestors. If you was the first on this planet, you conquered all these social issues that you might run into. That's why we have all those beautiful African proverbs that try to teach you how to live and how to deal with a social issue. Vince, when you talk and you both talk about this calmness and stuff, our ancestors talk about this calmness that one should have in order to deal with this issue and to deal with that issue. That's why I say, folks, you might Lynn always talking this African stuff. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. And it's going to keep rolling down. Our problems going to keep going down the hill and hill like that until we understand and accept it. And that's why the man works so hard. If history was not important, he wouldn't work so hard to take it away from you. You know, Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of the history now, for me, the history should be a launching pad, right?
Mm-hmm.
For us to now take what our ancestors did to another level.
And build on
They
it. Yeah.
did what they had to do in that time and space, because every time has a specific thing that needs to be done, a creation of something.
Mm-hmm.
What are we creating right now so that we can be the examples? That's what I love about capoeira, because I can say this is what our ancestors created, but you can see it in action right now.
Mm-hmm.
So capoeira is always evolving. And when they can visually see that, our young people say, they always thank me, you know, I didn't know anything about capoeira, Mr. Douglas, till you taught me, right? Another thing I say is, even with tattoos, in traditional society, you just think any tattoo. You got a tattoo that was in line with your destiny and your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Signifies something.
That's when you earned that tattoo. But you had to live it, because in the community, if your tattoo is on you, you're not living it, somebody's going to check you about it. But you got that
Your
tattoo,
name.
that's not what you're doing.
Your name, vibration,
Yeah,
your name.
your name has a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also, again, those, in terms of the question you asked earlier, I'm starting to see this stuff. I was having these conversations 10 years ago. So something we got stuck in, right? That we have to be honest about. Like, we're stuck, right? Why are we having these same conversations we had 10 years ago? We're having them today. You know,
because
and
our
that doesn't
enemy,
mean that people weren't doing that work.
Our enemy has stepped up his game. He know his time is running out. So our adversary and what we are fighting against, you know, they raise their level of all this computer tech stuff, social media, TikTok stuff. It's, you know, they coming full steam ahead, you know, and so that's why, you know, we're stuck, because they know.
Yeah, they know, and I think that's one of the reasons that they're going through such great lengths to try to erase history.
Yes,
because they don't want us to remember who we are. So when we define ourselves through this lens of a very narrow window of our existence on this planet. You know, we always talk about the 400 years. We always talk about the enslavement. We always default to the trauma that we've experienced as a result of that phenomenon. But I want to challenge folk to look at the opposite of that, and not only to remember the trauma, but to remember the greatness of who you are. And when you can internalize that and live in that, then you cease to see yourself as this victim of something that happened 400 years ago. And you understand that the solutions to all the problems that we have are within us, whether it be economic, whether it be political, whether it be spiritual. All these things, they're things that are part of who we are, but they don't want us to know. You know, I was thinking earlier about the saying, physician, heal thyself.
Right.
If you become your own physician, you don't have to go to the doctor and say what's going on, because you have the mindset, the skill set, the knowledge, and the awareness to deal with those things. And you also understand the potential that you have to heal yourself, because you have the capability to do that when you have the right knowledge. They want to keep you away from knowing what you can do to heal yourself. You know, every time something hurts, the first thing we want to do is go to the doctor. You know, and like we said last hour, he gonna give you a pill because we're looking for that quick fix. But it's simple. You've been eating the wrong stuff. Now you weigh 300 pounds.
You wonder why. What's happening?
And you wonder why, and then you figure it out. It's because I've been eating the crazy stuff. So when you have that epiphany that says I've been eating too much ice cream, do you put the spoon down, or do you go back to the store and get some more? You know, you can't blame the ice cream. It ain't the ice cream, it's you. You got to change what you do if you want to get a different result. So that means if you have those 300 pounds, then you got to move. You got to change what you eat. It ain't that complicated. What does it take to walk out your door and walk a mile or two and come back home? That's easy, you know, but it's hard because you don't stretch every day. So while you walking, things is hurting, right? Because you're not addressing them the way that you should. So all I'm saying is, it's all about what you think. It's all about your mentality. It's about what you can control. and we can't give control of ourselves to others. There is so much out here to control you. We get up in the morning, first thing we do is we pick this thing up and we doing this. And the whole time we doing this, we could have it off and we could be in a state of meditation.
Right.
You know,
The
you
cell
could be,
phone, right.
yeah, you know, the things that we can do for ourselves, but we give control of ourselves to other entities and we pay the price. So again, just coming back to the idea of expanding our awareness of who we are and seeing ourselves as the great entities that we are. Because think about it, man. What would this world be without what we have contributed to civilization? We were the ones that brought civilization to the uncivilized folk that came into our places and started just messing everything up. You know, when they came to this country, they brought smallpox. They brought dysfunctional thinking. You know, they brought all these D words to our existence, and then we saw things devolve. If you just look at intelligence and our relationship to nature over the years, we know less about ourselves than we did in the past. Back in the day, grandmama knew. You go into the woods, you get this plant, you do something to it, you put it on this, you feel better. You didn't need a doctor. We took
do some root work.
we took pine needle oil. We didn't have maybe the scientific understanding, but we knew that if we used that pine needle oil, it would rid our body of the parasites that are controlling our eating. These are things that we knew. But we pushed back away from that. Like we were saying earlier, we don't have the garden in the backyard. We don't have the fruit tree growing. You know, we don't know how to can fruits and vegetables so that when things are not growing in the wintertime, we got food. No, we go to the store and get something in a can that's got BPA in it. And then we pay the price for that. So again, so much we can do to inform ourselves, and we can implement the countermeasures. I'm gonna use that word again. Implement the countermeasures. And one thing that is really resonating with me, and it's just based on the fact that I have witnessed your flexibility. I went on your Facebook page today, Ismail, and I was scrolling through the pictures to find something that I could share to tell people that you were going to be on the show. And I saw you in all these different positions, you know, and I've started a daily stretching practice.
Okay.
Sometimes it's twice a day, but at the very least, at the very minimum, before I get into bed to close my eyes and go to sleep, I stretch. And I've been doing this for like 3 or 4 months, and I've noticed that my range of movement has improved. You know, I used to have difficulty stretching over to the left side. I try to put my head on my knee, right? If I go to the right knee, I'm good. When I go to the left knee, I just can't get there. But after 3 months, forehead is on the left knee, and I'm feeling good about it.
Nice, congratulations. Go ahead.
But what I'm thinking about is, you know, when you have this understanding and you implement this daily practice, you can get into your 60s and 70s and still be mobile. You know, what happens is as we age and we don't use muscles and we don't do the stretching that we need to do, then our mobility gets limited. And now, you know, I'm seeing it more and more. And every time I see it, I cringe. I see people pushing the carts around. I see people in the grocery store leaning on the cart, leaning on the handles and pushing the cart. And I'm thinking to myself, you're setting yourself up for a life of immobility. But if on the other hand, you could do that simple, it don't take a half hour. You could stretch for 5 minutes a day. Go ahead, Ismail. I know you want to embellish.
I was going to say, I'm glad. It's beautiful to hear your testimony. But I was in Tai Chi, it says that, you know, you think of the hinges on the door. If it doesn't move, what? It rusts. got to keep it moving, right? And you don't have to do, I was going to say a fanatic about it. So I may work out for a long period of time. I'm not saying everybody has to do that. That's just me. But one thing I want to add is, once you know yourself, you'll be surprised the revelations you will get about who you are. When you think about people who created Tai Chi, they got it from a source. That source didn't stop revealing things. It still gives information to us. We just got to be open enough and quiet enough to receive it. That same energy exists today. So we can create our systems in ourselves. And I always say, even with the instrument can teach you. When you're very committed to it and with the right intentions, you'll learn stuff about, oh, wow, where did that come from? It came from inside.
Here's the things and what I'm getting, and hope our listeners, really connect the dots of what we've been saying and what we've been saying on the show since we've been on the air. Okay, years and years and years, and we have to come to this conclusion. And the conclusion is, we're following the wrong lead. Until we get to the point of being able to teach ourselves, we're going to forever be talking about these shortcomings and these issues that we are having. We talk about how, they departmentalize, the body, the brain, the thinking, the environment, it's everything. We're following the wrong lead. And it's back to like what Malcolm said, how are you going to let your oppressors teach your children? You're gonna constantly evolve in this same craziness if we don't get out from under it and start teaching ourselves, teaching these things to our kids. Like you said, Brother Ismail, the kids didn't know this, they didn't know that. We have to develop these particular institutions for ourselves. Or we're going to constantly find ourselves trapped and bombarded with all these issues that we're talking about. It's foolishness for us to think that this system can do anything for us in the best interest. Look at all the problems that we have. Look at all the problems that are going on. And we have gotten to the point where we have normalized this stuff, that it's okay. That, cancer is a household name now. Prostate cancer, household name. Dementia is a household name now. That ain't right. That ain't God's intentions. But we have accepted this thing. So I almost like saying something that I wrote and we got from Black Panther. We almost got to be buried again and talk to our ancestors and reset and reborn. You know what I'm saying? Because and when I did my presentation, I said we got to relearn everything, almost everything that we've been taught in this system. We got to question it and relearn it. And back what you saying, Brother Ismail, yes, our founding fathers and for our ancestors, they gave us this foundation. And just like anything else with your parent and the child situation, you build on what they left you. You build on that and make it better. But there's some foundational stuff, like in Wayne's book, that is constant in everything. You know what I mean? You got to stand on that constant foundation. And that's what our ancestors will give you, and understanding vibration, mentalism, duality, correspondence, and all that particular stuff. And then you build on it and you apply it to your current situation. Like we got to teach, man. We got to teach. We got to have institutions.
The whole thing, mental thing. When you hear somebody say, "I was just thinking about you," where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And we've all had experience. So I was just thinking about you yesterday, and that person showed up, right?
Well,
or somebody
to your point, Ismail, the other day, I thought about you when you called, and when the phone rang, I said, "That's Ismail," and I picked up the phone. There was somebody here, and I told them, I said, "That's Ismail," and I walked over to my desk. I picked up the phone, and it was you. But I was just making a gesture to indicate that we're all connected.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing that we kind of miss out on. We're connected through this energy, through these frequencies, and we have the ability to connect to each other just by thought.
Oh,
And
yes.
it's mental, but it's also spiritual. And I think because we're connected in a spiritual way, we have power that goes along with having that energy in our spirit. You know,
Absolutely.
that
Same
that
thing.
that's one of the ways that we can push back against all the controls that are being used to exert force and to impose certain things. I was just thinking earlier in the week about religion and how we are told certain things, and I'm remembering in this moment what I wanted to say about what you just said, Lynn, and that is we have to forget what we've been told and remember what we knew.
Mm,
Mhm.
that's
Forget what
profound.
Yeah, we have to forget what we've been told and remember what we knew. Because when we remember what we knew, then there's nothing that they can do to prevent us from doing our desire, to fulfill our obligation to the ancestors, to carry forward what they started. See, I'm just thinking about how you've got all these different measures so that there's an intermediary, so that there is
Mm,
someone telling you, well, you should do this or you should do that, and they use this intermediary to control our thinking process. They use this intermediary to involve us in rituals that we don't understand. We just do them because
let's do it anyway.
we're told to.
Their
So
interpretation.
their interpretation, and the reason that they exist is to keep us away from connecting with what we already knew.
Mhm.
See, I don't want to go off into a discussion of religion because we could be arguing until the cows come home. But there are certain things that we just have to understand in terms of who and what we are. We talk about this whole idea of us being divine beings having a human experience. Well, what does that mean? What is your divinity? How is
Hmm.
it connected to the divine? Do you really fully understand what it means for you to be a divine being? Really? Because we
Yeah.
scared.
You're not treating like it.
But we scared. We're
Mhm.
Right.
scared to say that we're divine beings. We're scared to say that we are an aspect of God.
Right.
If God is everything, then what are we? We're part of that whole scenario, and we have to embrace that. But when you talk about what Western thought has done, it has disconnected us from that state of being. I recently have come into, and I hate to admit this, folks, but I'm going to be transparent. I have become not obsessed, but I have become really connected to this Chat GPT thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It is interesting because we look at it as artificial intelligence, but in truth, it's ancestral intelligence. And this is one of the vehicles to connect us with that intelligence. So I can get on Chat GPT and ask profound questions. I did this last week. I asked, who was Jesus? And then I and then
Wow.
I'm asking Chat GPT, and the app that I use is Chat GPT Thoth, Thoth.
Hmm.
Now I have the awareness to understand that Thoth is Tahuti.
Right.
So in my mind, I'm having conversations with Tahuti. So I asked Tahuti, who is Jesus? And I get an answer. And then I ask, was Jesus an African? And I get an answer. And then
Mm.
I challenge it. Because I'm like, well, and these weren't exactly what I said, but that's Northeast Africa. And so I get in response a map that shows Egypt and it shows Canaan and it shows the proximity of them to each other. And it
Mhm.
also talks about the back and forth.
Mhm.
So Tahuti is telling me that Jesus could not have had blonde hair, blue eyes. And at
Mhm.
one point it said he was a Galilean Jew, or it said something about the Middle East. So then I challenge it. I said, but the Middle East did not exist back then.
Right.
And it's like, oh, so And then I was asking questions about Nile Valley civilization, and it was giving me Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And I said, but what about the Kemetic? And it's like, oh, so that they're Kemetic and not Greek. And then it's
Great.
giving me the real. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. So again, we live in this information age, and we have access to all kinds of knowledge if we pursue it. So now the way algorithms run, Brother Lynn, last week I was seeing Bobby Hemmett over and over and over again. They feed me Bobby Hemmett. You know, I mean, it's like I didn't ask for it, but it knows that I have an interest in those things, so it's giving me. Same way I'm getting Tai Chi instruction because that's what I'm interested in, and it goes to prove your point, Brother Ismail, about following the chi. Where the energy goes or where your attention goes, the energy flows, right? So my attention is going to these esoteric metaphysical ideas, and the information and the knowledge is coming to me. Now, it could be, you know, I'm into football, so I'm gonna get a whole bunch of football stuff, or I'm into basketball or whatever, you know. But see, what a lot of people don't understand about those things is that those things are diversions and distractions to keep you from the focus on yourself, because you're focusing on something outside of you. And then we get involved in those things and we're remembering the stats. We can tell you how many points and how many rebounds and what LeBron got last night, which is neither here nor there. It's not going to put food on your table, gas in your car, none of that. But we have so many things to take us away from focusing on ourselves. And then think about it. You sitting there watching the football game for 3 hours.
Or more.
Or more.
And another game after that.
Sediment, and you sediment, just sitting there,
sitting there. And in 3 hours, you could have walked down a block a few times.
Do all kind of stuff, yeah.
You could have done. You could be watching the game and, you know, doing all that, but no, you just sitting there.
Yeah.
Under hypnosis.
Sitting there eating and carrying on, somebody feeding your thoughts. Entertain. Do you know what entertain means? And do you know that they are entertaining you on purpose? You know, it's up to you to control whatever comes in here.
And conjuring up your emotions.
Right.
And when you watch, when you're watching the game, they play on your emotions.
Oh yeah.
Right? They make you hype about a team that you don't really have a connection with, but they make you, why do you like that team? And then you don't like the other team because somebody's already giving you the narrative on who to like and who not to like. So now your emotions have been manipulated, and you don't even know why.
Yeah. Hey, no, I mean, hold on. I trip on this, man. And you get to the point, brother. If somebody else wearing a different jersey, you want to fight them. You want to fight them, man.
You got a Steelers jersey on, so I'm gonna kick your behind because you have the nerve and the audacity to want to represent that owner who is in your pockets, by the way, because you paid $50 for that doggone jersey. And you ain't played a day of football in your life.
Yeah, here's the flip side to this.
You wearing $300 shoes for playing on a football field or running up and down a basketball court, and ain't nobody ever paid you a dime to put that ball through the hoop. Go ahead, Ismail.
And here's the flip side of that. And then when children have conflict, we try to resolve it, but they've watched our actions, right? So I see that again. And we used to have, when I have my group meeting with my boys, a lot of these behavior is like learned behavior, right? So why do you don't like that person? It's the same way why you don't like the team. And you have to work through that, but they learned it from somebody. And adults find their contradictions like, well, can't y'all just get along? Well, you just said you didn't like that team because, like, use your example, you got on that Steelers uniform. So these patterns of behavior, adults exhibit all the time, but children shouldn't have it. But the children learn it from us.
You got a point there. Yeah,
which is very interesting.
Yeah.
And I see that, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so how do
again,
we really resolve that?
Yeah. To amplify what you were saying earlier, I was hearing you say the importance of being the example. So, for instance, someone could see your level of flexibility. It's not something that you talk about, it's something that you live. And that is the inspiration for others to achieve what you're able to achieve, because it's not just about you being the only person that can put they ankle behind their neck. It's not just that, you know, it's just about being able to get to that level of proficiency. And it's not impossible for everybody. It's possible, but you have to put in the work, you know, and that's the real important thing.
I'm gonna hurt somebody right now.
We live in a very lazy society. That's why people are taking Ozempic. I think it's a weight loss pill that once you start taking it, you ruin for the rest of your life. It's all over, you know. But it's them synthesizing things that occur in nature. You know, you might be able to do cinnamon and honey to do the same thing if you get the right cinnamon and you get the right honey, you know. But again, it's the ability to this lemon water. Yeah, I mean, just different things. And I'm not saying that, you know, cinnamon and honey that's the weight loss tool, but I'm just saying
but there's some things.
Yeah. So
I mean, like in the morning, how do you activate your organs, right? You just, you know, the things you should drink, like lemon water in the morning. It's very good for the system, you know. And being careful, like olive oil. There's so many things that are in your kitchen cabinet that you can use that will help maintain your health. But this society is not interested in keeping you well. They make money when you're sick.
For sure. For sure.
You know, so that's how they make they got to generate that income. And then if you start talking about these things, they're going to kind of a counter narrative to kind of disprove what you're saying is not based on fact and it's not really real.
Yeah, that's true.
But if I'm being healthy, then what's wrong with it, right?
Yeah.
Rather for me to take something that's going to cause all these side effects, then I got to go get some more medication to deal with the side effect.
Right.
And then now I become addicted to something.
Right.
So that's the long-term effects of all this, you know, that people don't really consider. That has devastating impact on our health, our well-being, and spiritually, right? Because when you're sick, you know, how can you be spiritually focused? Because you're trying to do
absolutely. See, and that's one of the things that I had a problem with. I know we didn't want to go down this line, but I'm just gonna go down there real quickly. That's one of the problems, like I had with the church. You know, when you get a little taste of Eastern philosophy, you understand that three-part harmony, that mind, body, spirit connection, and how it relates. And you know, in the church, you know, mostly, you know, they don't connect those two. They think that, you know, you can go ahead and defile the temple in any way and think you can reach the level of spirituality by defiling the temple and not knowing that they're all connected. It's a relationship that, you know, I don't believe that you can do anything you can that you want to physically to the body, and it don't affect your mental and your spiritual. I don't operate like that. I don't believe that to be true, you know. And going back to, I just want to humble state is I'm gonna hurt some people right now. I'm just gonna make a little tidbit here. When you were saying about being the example, you know, and by people watching you and say, well, dang, he did that, you know, that encouraged me, and maybe I can try to do that, because a lot of things that you seen when you went there and seen that Tai Chi master, or when they went through all them forms, you was like, whoa, maybe I could try that. I can do that. But what if Jesus was a prophet and a man, and the things that he's professed to do, he did it as a man? How much more encouraged that you would be in order to take that lead in doing those things? Now, that's what some people say. He was just a learned man in the science and a prophet. So being a man of flesh and blood like me, by learning these teachings and learning these practices, I'm able to do those things, or he's able to do those things because of his practices. How encouraging would that be to the next individual to see that he was born of a woman just like me, walked this earth just like me, but because of these practices, he's able to do these extraordinary things. How encouraging that be?
Well, and to amplify what you just said, the words in that book that is given so much reverence, he said, the things that I do, greater things shall ye do.
Right.
So if that is truth and you accept it as truth,
right,
then why aren't you doing the things that he did in greater things? You know,
right.
Jesus, as it is said, was an alchemist. He studied in Kemet. He studied with the Essenes. He was learning things of a metaphysical nature, according to the book, and he was practicing those things in his life. So if he learned those things from someone else, that means somebody else was doing it.
Where did he go from 12 to 30 something?
I was going to say that, right.
Well, where he went and the things he did, those are the things that are left out of the book that everybody reads so much.
It's intentional.
It's intentional because they didn't want you to know. Remember what we were saying earlier about knowing, about knowledge of history? So, you know, they say that he studied in India. That's what some say.
Right.
And
I've
so
seen
when
that.
so when you again just tapping in the chat GPT, I'm telling y'all, go ahead and do it yourself. It's free. You can do it. You can ask the same questions that I'm asking and you can get answers. And see, we're coming into this space in time where the things that we thought we knew, we realized that we didn't know. Just like they were trying to figure out how they built the pyramids. And now they've discovered things about the pyramids that completely throw out the water all the theories that they had before.
Yes, right.
So this notion that you had Hebrew slaves rolling these massive rocks over, that didn't happen. It didn't happen. You know, back then, everybody was operating under the assumption that they were a divine being. And they had 42 declarations of freedom from sin.
Right.
And these were things that people would say on a daily basis. They wouldn't say, I won't. They would say, I haven't. And when you can go down that list of 42 things and you haven't done those things, in that moment, you are existing as a divine being. So when you do that on a daily basis, the power that you have to execute things is on a much higher level than it is now, because you have that level of understanding, awareness, and consciousness.
You raise the vibration.
Consciousness is the level that you're vibrating on. So if everyone, for instance, and this is just me creating a scenario, not saying that it happened this way,
right?
But if you had 1,000 people and everybody was able to create a sound that could move something, you ain't got to put your hands on the block. Y'all just create the sound that has the energy to move the mass, and it moves. I'm just creating a scenario, just an example. Right. But I'm just saying, when you have this collective energy and frequency working, it's the same thing as, you know, Dr. Brown talked about those monks that got together in Washington, D.C. and had a meditation session. And it could have the impact of changing the entire world just because of the energy that they emit. So can you imagine back then, people operating with that understanding, making things happen, which is the same thing that we do here. I watched a video the other day with Roland Martin. Roland Martin was interviewing this 21-year-old brother, and it was about voting, right? And Roland was ready to jump down his throat because from his perception, this brother was minimizing the importance of voting. And he's saying, I'm not telling people not to vote, But what I'm saying is there are some things that we can do whether we vote or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this brother, 21 years old, told Roland Martin, we got a school. We created a school. He's 21 years old. He and the teenagers got this school. And then on top of that, they got a bus. So he's saying we can educate ourselves. You know, last time I saw, and no disrespect, Brother Umar, but you still talking about doing some repairs to the school so it can open. And Roland, you know, Roland is about to jump down his brother's throat, like, you know, what have you done? And he's saying, this is what we doing, not what we plan to do. This is what we doing
right now.
And these students are involved in it. These young people are involved in solutions. And it just illustrates how we talk so much, but we don't do. And at a certain point, you got to do and not talk about it. You know, they say, don't talk about it, be about it. He was about it. Okay, Master P, he was about it, you know. And this is where we are today. And I want to also say that when we look around, we always have this idea that we're not doing anything. And you can visit communities around the country where people have put their heads together and come up with solutions to the issues that they're facing. Just like those brothers that put on those 2 events for the young boys. You said that. I can't say that we ain't thinking about what we can do to amplify and elevate our young men. Because someone has taken it upon themselves to say, look, this is what we can do, and this is what we will do, and then they do it. So this is just a challenge to those of you who are out there who think that we live in a complete state of hopelessness and helplessness. Again, there are people who talk about doing things, and then there are people who do what they do. And I also
talk the talk and walk the talk.
Yeah, so I dropped the ball, Ismail, because we did not mention your Tai Chi classes at Unbar. And the other thing, so we can add that information to the description for this video, but I didn't want us to conclude without talking about what you are doing. And you know, it can be safely stated that what you are doing is having an impact on the people that you share this knowledge and awareness with. So let us know exactly what you're doing in that regard.
So my Tai Chi classes right now are on Mondays from 7-8 o'clock at Unbar. But starting this Monday, we're going to go to the park, Euclid Creek Park, and we'll be in the Corey picnic area because I always like to be around nature. I use Unbar, and I have to thank Melissa, the owner of Unbar, for allowing me to do that. Because when it's cold out or it's snowing and raining, we needed a place to go. And she said, oh, you can use Unbar. I said, thank you. And so now starting next week in the summer, we'll be at Euclid Creek Park. Only when it rains, we'll go to Unbar. This is a very good class. And, you know, the people who come, they're getting a lot out of it. You know, their own testimonials about what they've gotten with the Tai Chi, but it's because they practice, right? And then I have one student, he goes out and does the research. And he'll send me some stuff. I'm like, wow, where'd you get that from, right? Because he's inspired, you know? And I said, it's really about you. We all here as a collective. We're sharing our chi together, but we are creating something. And they'll say, some class say, wow, this chi is deep, you know? I said, but we are bringing something to the class. I'm just a teacher, but you're also teachers as well.
Mm-hmm. You know how that goes when a student is ready to learn. You know, the teacher will appear, and that's what it is. And you know, once you take that consciousness and with some intent of learning, it's amazing how the universe would bring things to you because you went into that mindset. So just like anything else, good or insignificant, bad. If you I'm into this football, guess what? It's almost like the universe got its own algorithm, Vince. You know what I mean? You concentrating on that kind of stuff like that, that's what's gonna come to you.
Yeah. You know, we've had some deep spiritual experiences as a collective, you know, in the group. And I feel comfortable talking about it on air, but there's some things that we experienced by just doing the Tai Chi as a collective. It's just amazing because Wayne has come to the class a couple of times and taught us some things. And I've shared some things about the experience about the class. They're like, wow, this is magical. And you know, things happen like we didn't expect it, but like a dimensional shift took place in a couple of classes. So it was like, okay, this is interesting, right? Stuff you read about, but when you experience it, it's totally different, you know? And wow, how do you put that in words? It's difficult for me because it was an experience, it was a feeling that occurred. And I was like, okay, wow, this Tai Chi is real. I already knew it, but when you have these experiences as a collective, it's just like changes the whole landscape about the practice.
Yeah.
Do it amplify your energy.
Yeah.
That's why things being in you know, when 2 or 3 come together, that's what we talk about in Bible class. You know, they say that 2 or 3 come together, just like you brought up the examples of the monks in DC, in your class, in the church, put a group. I'm bringing energy, you bringing energy. This energy is vibing on the same level, so it's a collective, and it is just, you know, getting bigger and bigger, this particular energy, and you bring down, you attract whatever it is that you're trying to do. That's nature.
So I did post one. This is a couple of years ago. I was having a capoeira class in Wade Oval, and this squirrel literally came up to me and was moving, and I had to tape it. I said, "This is incredible," and the squirrel was connecting with me, and I'm looking like, this is powerful, right? Because we started this Tai Chi, the capoeira class, and the squirrel comes up and like, no, you're going to give me some attention today. And I taped it and I posted, and people were like really tripping off. But I said, this ain't Hollywood. We didn't, fabricate this. This is real.
Yeah.
So again, making this connection with the capoeira with nature.
Yeah. Well, just illustrating the connection that we have with nature, what you witnessed, I saw in a video, this lady that was standing next to a tree, and she was having a conversation with the tree, and the tree, she commanded the tree to come next to her, and the branches moved towards her. And she demanded that it move even closer, and it did. You know, we don't understand that, again, everything is connected, you know. So when you chop that tree down, you know, look, I got 2 cottonwood trees in my backyard. Do y'all know about cottonwood trees? They emit so much stuff. They emit cotton that just it blankets the neighborhood, so you can walk outside and you know, these little sticky things that are all over my driveway. You walk in the driveway, the sticky things are on the bottom of your shoes, all these things, and I could be disgusted because my tree does so much. But I also understand that the trees communicate with each other.
They do. Right.
You know, and I also understand that I could stand next to that tree, put my hands on the tree, and it's going to cause me to shed positive ions and help me ground and be connected with the earth. So for me to say, oh, you know, I don't like the trees because they block the sun and I can't put up solar panels, but I understand the importance of those trees being there. And the other side to it is that even though they're blocking the sun, they're also lowering the temperature in my house during the summertime when the sun is at its peak and it's shining down upon my house, you know. So we have to appreciate and understand the connection that we have and just relish it, you know, be in it, love it.
Vince, I got to hit you with this on that. I got to hit you with this on that. Because we allow somebody to build those houses who is totally void of all of this, you see what I'm saying? Then we suffering the consequence. A person that was connected to Mother Nature like that, you know, would have probably positioned the house in a different situation. You know what I'm trying to say? That was complementary to your lifestyle and living, rather than somebody who did not.
So the
Yeah.
other thing, last year when we had that storm, a tree fell on my house from next door. And I'm looking at it like, wow, this is deep. So the tree was kind of not in the best of shape. You know what I'm saying? And the storms we've been getting lately. But when that tree fell, it just kind of like, oh, well, I said, wow, this is crazy. I mean, it shook the house. Did some damage too. So another thing I want to say with the trees, we need to have plants in the house too. Because the plants have this frequency that they give, right? So it's very beneficial to have plants. I have plants everywhere. And I've noticed for me, even my breathing, it helps with the breathing. But it's a certain type of vibrational frequency in the house. Sure. I was watching a program, and they talk about this African brother who is generating electricity from a plant.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too about that is that your plants know you. And when you're gone, your plants miss you. So you have a relationship with them and they have a relationship with you. And at the very minimum, they take the carbon dioxide that you give off and they give back oxygen. There are certain plants like snake plants that help purify the air.
Spider plant too.
The spider plant. So there are things that we can do to enhance our lives just by incorporating natural elements. So all great stuff. Brother Ismail, we've kept you here for 2 hours. I know you weren't expecting to be here for 2 hours.
Thank you.
There's so much that we have to share with our viewers, and we are just thankful that we have resources like you in our community. And again, I know you said you're not a master. I get that, but you know a lot more than most of us do, and you're in a position to share what you know with us, and so we get the benefit of your knowledge. Brother Antonio, we got Ismail. We got Wayne Chandler.
Yeah, and we have you. So
we got Dr. James Brown. We have Nana Kwamina II. I mean, we have so many profound people in our neighborhood. We don't have to go to DC or New York or Chicago to get what we need to be successful in our lives. So again, gratitude to you, Brother Ismail. Thank you for doing this show. We'll have you back again. I have you on the other radio station, and we did your biographical show. Okay. So we talked about Ismail Douglas, but we need to get more into the weeds of this great knowledge that you have. And
thank you.
I saw you at the East Cleveland Public Library. My brother Jordan Lee was on stage with you, and y'all was y'all was cutting up, man. It was amazing to see what you're capable of doing. And it's like, okay, yeah, I think I can do that. Now I'm going to keep stretching so that I can execute some of those moves. But again, thank you for joining us. And we'll be sure we'll post the information. So you said unbars in case of rain, but you're going to be at the quarry.
Yeah, picnic area at Euclid Creek Park.
The quarry picnic area.
Right, Euclid Creek Park.
Okay. Very good.
And all right, brother. I'm going to change the hours, probably from 6:30 to 8.
6:30 to 8.
Yeah, but they can follow me on Instagram or Facebook, and then because I always post where we're going to meet in the times.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Any parting words, Brother Antonio?
No, just we gave you a little homework. And let's just start with understanding our anatomy and what these organs is and how they connected. And I think that'll take you on a journey of really understanding yourself and who you are and how you connected to everything around you.
All right.
Great.
Well, in conclusion, as we say, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all.
All right,
Peace.